shot in Venice of the series Homo Urbanus was shot because we just moved in Venice. And we moved in Venice just before the Acqua Alta 2019 and just before the start of COVID. So very hard times for the city of Venice, 2019 was one of the second highest high tide of a century or something like that, which had terrible consequences and made incredible damages. So when we understood that it was getting worse and worse, we thought, okay, let's go and film. It was actually a rather slow process, and the city was not expecting something so disastrous initially, but because there was a combination of, each year, twice a year, you have high tides, but then there was particularly strong winds and a storm coming. So this combination made it disastrous. But the film has been shot over a week because the phenomena was growing over a week. And so it's interesting, you get a feel of initially, tourists thought it was even more photogenic to make some images with the feet in the water and to take some pictures like this. And then you understand that it turns really bad. So people start to look for getting away of this city, which becomes a trap because when the tide was so high, you couldn't even leave the city and there were no boats anymore. So the film observed this transformation of how it is felt, perceived, and how it really gets to a dramatic point. And but Venice is a real laboratory for us to observe the various perspectives. Not only because actually it's a laboratory for climate change and all these questions. It's also an important topic here at the university. But for instance, now we are working on it on the side of children and starting to make a film on 8 years old perspective, because it's quite unique, as I was telling you. It's a city where it's one of the rare cities where without any cars, kids have this ability to appropriate every space of the city. It's a very mineral city with very rare parks, so there are no dedicated space for playgrounds. But the city itself turns to be a playground, and you see in all the big squares where above all close to schools, and at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, these squares become children's places, and tourists and people have to adapt to games of kids, and it's really, really interesting to see how kids just interact with this labyrinthic structure of the city and turn it into just play.
Mm-hmm. And then, Ila, you were saying how, you know the city from when you studied, mm-hmm. And you were just saying how sometimes if you don't leave for too long, you could easily feel a little bit trapped. So I wonder, there's like a labyrinthine quality.
It depends. It depends if it's for your work or for just living. But Venice is a kind of it's an island, so it's a kind of bubble. The time passes differently in Venice than in the rest of the world, because it's really an island. So there's just a bridge that brings you inside when you are inside, and this bridge that you have seen is a bridge that is really a fracture between the real world and the fictional world that is in Venice. When you are in Venice, you are in a fiction, and it's a kind of bubble, and the time is different. So you are inside this world that is very pleasant. It's wonderful to stay here, but in a sense, you are completely outside the real world. So you need all the time to take the bridge and go inside the real world to come back also. This kind of back and forward is very pleasant, because you can understand better what kind of life you do here. That is totally different. As Luis said, it's a city that has been totally preserved by the industrialization and the new city, by the cars, and so there are many, even in Italy, but in France, other places, there's many medieval cities, but like Rome, for example, but cars arrived at the moment, so the city had to deal with the industrialization, and the cars and all this kind of the new urbanization of the city. But this didn't happen in Venice, because this was kind of really the bridge is a wall. It's a kind of wall that takes out the city from the reality. And so when you are here, it's a kind of paradise for the human body. The body feels perfectly here. It fits perfectly in this city, because it's the city that has to be built thinking about the dimension of the body. So everything is done for this. When you go in other cities, new cities, the new city has been built for a car, so the scale is not the same. It's not the scale of your body that built the city. So you feel very good for that in Venice. And obviously also there's the relationship with the water that is incredible, and the light is different. So everything is a kind of dream. Obviously there's like in every other city, there's a lot of tourism, the mass tourism today, but there's a wave in Venice to live together, or even not separated, but try to find a wave and not to be all the time in the middle of this tourism. It's a big problem, but in a sense, it stays like it remains a very, very human scale city. Yeah.
Because every time, I mean, whenever I come here, I feel like there is a real kind of dense urban life here. It's like a dense urban life that you would associate with London or New York.
Oh yeah.
But then there are no cars.
It's interesting because with friends who grew up here in the 60s or 70s, they say the human density you can experiment today with the tourist in the city every day is similar to the density of how it was inhabited by that time in the 70s. And so it has always been.
So that's the kind of amount of people that would just live here.
Exactly. So actually this feel of sometimes, being online, having difficulty to move around, it has always been like this. Now the city is aging, is depopulating. It has this decrease of number of residents because the tourism pressure is an incitation for Venetians to rent their flats, because they would just earn money like this without doing much, and they go to live in the mainland. And so that's a real issue of the city, because you have less and less local inhabitants on a daily basis, because there is such an easy source of money. And but hopefully I think the city has this chance of having a strong university, which brings students in, and the Biennale also, which is a real source of
cultural, yeah.
There's something interesting in I think in the relation, as I said, about the time, because the time in Venice, as you can also feel it, when you arrive, immediately when you arrive, you feel that the time is different. So you're not running all the time. In the other cities, when you arrive in Paris, in London, you feel that everybody's running and you have to run, not to be the last one. So it's a kind of psychological time. You're always late, or you think about it to be late, and so you have to run that direction, the other one, take a transport, take that, and you also to schedule your time, because you don't have time. You never have time in the other cities. This is not happening in Venice. In Venice, you feel immediately that you're in a fiction, so in another world, and time is for you. So you have time to do things. You don't have to run because you can, also because you have to go by walking, so you can run a little bit.
City that slows you down, even despite your will, because it's complex to move around.
Yes. I mean, you get a bridge every 200 meters.
So that's interesting how a city is able to create a different time. As the architecture of the city give the time flow. Yeah.
So interesting. It's a bit like film.
Yeah.
So there's almost like a filmic quality, because film is like you kind of control.
Let's say it directs. It's the director, the city.
I mean, I guess every city can be seen as some form of director or some form of.
The city create behaviors, no? The space, how you shape the space it is going to create and to involve some behavior to the people. And so all the people have a kind of relationship with each other, but they have something in common, and that is one is the time how they spend the time, is the rhythm. More than the time is the rhythm of the city. So every city have his own rhythm. You go to New York, the rhythm is very, very fast. Also, that you go in other cities, it's slower. And in Venice, it's maybe, I don't know if there's other city like this, that the rhythm is completely different. So you have to enter in this rhythm. You cannot impose your own rhythm. So, and this is for the relationship with the people, it's very interesting because it's the only place where you can meet people and spend time with them. They are not in a hurry. This is nothing. I lived for 25 years in Paris, and this is impossible to imagine. You always, if you meet someone is running somewhere, so no one has time to spend with you, or for the others, they just have to a little bit. They have to take an appointment, but this appointment is I have just half an hour because I have to go there. And this is something also because the city is not so big, so it's a small city, and so you can all the time you can meet people on the street and have your time to talk with them.
Yeah, it gives psychological availability.
Yeah, this is a kind of availability.
Well, it's like creates space, creates time, or
it's the space time, but the space also has been shaped. It regulates the time, obviously, and this is a kind of resistance of the city, because the city for the qualities that he has can resist to all of this. It doesn't resist obviously to the commercialization, to the restaurant they play in the urban place, all the kinds of things that arrived, but the architecture resists. Is not the architecture of the city doesn't allow to this industrialized city to arrive in the inside. So it keeps this wall, this bridge keeps out all these kinds of things. Many others, they arrived also, but it resists. Maybe it's the only one, or some other little historical center of other little cities. But this is a big city, so it's a very big historical center. The whole city is an historical center. So, and also there's no possibility to arrive from abroad because there's water outside. So it's very interesting how the shape of the space of the city create the behavior of the not all the inhabitants but for everyone. Because when you arrive, many people arriving for the Biennale, they change also. They different. You meet these people arriving from New York, and here they are not the same.
Because they're having, and and also I think biennales are something that there is something very extroverted about the city, but then when you're in the city, it's very introverted. I feel, because there's this kind of big cultural events happening here every year, really. I mean, multiple. I mean, at the moment, it's like music as well as film, as well as architecture biennale. You know, sometimes they really overlap.
You have dance, theater, music, art, and
So there is this extreme kind of extrovertness, but then it's also when you're in the city, then it's totally introverted.
yeah, it's you have several layers. I mean, Venice could be seen, understood, and lived through various layers. I mean, you can have very local life, you can have a very international life, and you can have remain on the surface as a tourist staying just one day. But I think what makes Venice not only a monumental historic city is what brings in the Biennale, which is really a laboratory of ideas and a source of actuality in all these disciplines, which is quite amazing. I think there is no other city similar in terms of this density of cultural provocations and proposals all year round, you know?
There's something, there's a little detail that's interesting. I don't know if it's related is this true or not, but the Biennale and all other cultural institutions in Venice, there's no market. The Biennale doesn't sell anything. It's not commercial. It's just to show. It's like at the Biennale, you come here not to buy things, not to buy.
It's not art Basel.
It's not. It's not a foire. You say
A fair.
a fair. It's not a fair. So this is more in the head of everyone. Is more a place to have relationship, not commercial. And this is I don't know if it's related to this kind of resistance that the city has, but it's happening. And so there's no the typical violence of the market, you know. There's no, even the galleries, there's no big galleries selling here. They sell elsewhere. But they come here just to show, to meet, to have a relationship, no? So the relationship is much more important than the market.
And I guess there's also something about coming back, because once you're an architect, and once you've been to a biennale, you'll see the value of coming again, either to the art biennale. I mean, I sometimes feel like architects should be coming to the art biennale and artists should be going to architecture. But then there's this idea of coming back and re-engaging. You know, it's not like you just come here once, but you develop that relationship. I guess maybe we could talk a little bit about, I don't know, has Venice taught you anything about filmmaking?
About filmmaking.
It's not about filmmaking. It's about we make films. So the filmmaking we make is just let's say a tool. It's a tool, but we don't make only films. We also make many other. We try to do it also with books and installation, exhibition. We do several different things. Mostly film because it works well, but it's not really related to filmmaking. The filmmaking is something that allows us to talk to think about how we live a space, how we relate to a space. So obviously Venice is very important to that. It's very important because we relate to space, as we said, in a different way. But what is interesting in the space of Venice, related also to the space of the other cities, to see how is the same that we said, how a city creates behaviors unconsciously. You don't know. You don't think about it. We never think about this, but in a sense, we are completely directed by the space. We are in the space. Someone else had decided, even historically, they change a lot. But when you do a new city, for example, a new project, a new building, does the architect or the promoter or the client or whatever you want, they decide how to use your body to make a kind of path to let you go from a place to another place. In some example, it works well. In many other we are totally manipulated. Just to give you an example, every time we go to the airport, we understand that how our bodies are completely manipulated in the airport. The airport is another bubble, is a commercial bubble, and inside this commercial bubble, the laws are completely different from outside. There's no concurrence, everything is controlled, and for going to take your plane, you have to pass by the duty free. So you are totally, it's like going to IKEA, no? IKEA, you go there for buying things. At the airport, you don't go for buy things, you go to take a plane. But you are in the same part, the same system of the IKEA. So I manipulate yourself, your direction, and I decided that if you want to go from this place to that place, you have to pass inside the duty free, and I will not allow to go directly there, but I will tell you to do like this, zigzag, because you have to buy things, no? So we are completely manipulated, but this is visual. It's easy to understand. But even in the city, many other behaviors are manipulated. But who is deciding how to shape the space, and who is deciding how to shape the space is normally the power. No, is the power, the system who can control the system, and controlling the system is the first law of the controlling the system is controlling the space. When you control the space, it's done. You cannot do it anything. So you cannot understand it very well because you were talking about the COVID. During COVID, we were totally control spatially, because we couldn't go outside, or if we can go outside, but you can go just there and there and there. So this was a control of the space. Even in China, we have seen incredible scene of people that couldn't go outside. It creates a kind of prison, no? And the prison, what is a prison? The prison is I take out your space, no, your possibility of space. So what if you are a criminal? The only thing that I have to punish you today, or punish you, they will say to create a good citizen, but is to punish, to take you out, remove your space. You cannot go outside. You stay in your little space. So everything is passing through space. Everything is a question of space. Even the war. When you make war to appropriate of the space of the others. So it's a question of take the space that belongs to someone else. That's with violence. So it's very, as you can imagine, it's so important, no? Because I can make a war just to take space. What is I'm interested in is the space. So everything is related to space, and the power control the space very in the detail, in any detail. We have many examples. Paris, for example, with Haussmann, has been completely reshaped from the power, no, from the system that control the city, that they wanted to have a city that has been very immediately controlled by the army, no. So this was an incredible change of the city because it was so dangerous to be controlled. So everything passed by that. So we make films and filmmaking because we want to understand how in our ordinary life, every day, we receive this kind of oppression by the control of the space. And this is happening in a domestic space and domestic life, and much more in a public life. So when you go outside in a park, in a street, we made many films, 14 films in 14 different cities, to understand how this kind of control is stronger in a place on the other, or different, how they act. And when you put all these films together, you can understand that many times they have the same way of control. Yeah, many tactics. Even about tactics, for example, there's something very interesting also is how to take out the space to the homeless. And there's all a kind of very enormous production of design and architecture that doesn't allow homeless to stay in the public space. So how they do it? Through the shaping of space. So it's an incredible tool. It's an incredible tool. The shaping the space is an incredible tool that can allow you to control a lot. And so, for example, for the city, if we don't understand this, and we're making film for this, to try to understand ourselves and to communicate also, that we have to be aware of this. And when you will be aware of this, you will say, no, I don't want it. My city, the city, I'm not the owner of the city, not someone else have to decide, no? Because there's always someone else that is deciding how the city will be. But it's we are citizens of the city. We have to be ourselves the deciders of how the city has to be. But if you don't have a kind of education about this, you don't even think about this, how can you do it? No? So we always say that we think, so that's why we work already with the kids in the city. We would like that. We would like to see, for example, at school or even in the family to have an education to space. Understanding what is a space. How you can say this is also my space, and I don't want like this. No?
I think one thing that I really strongly resonates for me from what you're saying, Ila, is that you almost, in some ways, approach your work, let's say, almost as activists. Do you ever think in those terms? It's almost like you're there to kind of offer an alternative or to observe something that potentially may...
Wait, that's a different with the activist. The activist is going straight to the point and says, no, this doesn't work, let's do in another way. That's very good, it's okay. But we think more about kind of, like I said, education. So we propose other way of thinking, and we are going to observe. We think that the first step is observing. More than first step is observing, to be aware of something, and after that you will be able to change. But if you go straight to the change without knowing why and without even know what's the problem, because an activist acts because the problem is very visible. No, there's a war, I am against the war, I go against the war. But here we don't see the problem. Nobody sees the problem. We have been making film for 20 years and no one understands what are you doing. They think we are making film about architecture. We are not making film about architecture. We are making film about how people relate to the space, and the space is so important, and this relation is so important. So they think it's a long work to do, to explain that we are working on something that is universal. We are not making film about the architects or a building. It's just not our interest. And also when people see our film, people interested in architecture, they see our film, they can like the film, but at the end they say, where is the architecture? I don't see anything. I don't know anything about the building, the architects. It's not about information. It's about just showing how is happening this relationship with the space. And when you see this, you have to work yourself. It's not everything's ready. Like activism, everything's ready. Let's go there. We don't prepare the...
No, above all, because in activism you would have one single answer, a sort of one rule to replace the precedent rule. And as Ila was saying, we act in our way of using film as observer, harvesting material and thoughts and way of living from people, and we learn from them in every situation, from every different culture we go to, and every single person we film bring us their own understanding. We try to work at a very intimate scale, just looking at a very personal, very emotional relation to spatiality. And so this brings out a way of expressing their thoughts quite unique. And if we would make films that are more in a sort of activist approach, we would have one single line of thought, whereas we like this plurality, bringing together even contradictions, and in order to open up a more vast, we open up questions more than giving answers.
So for you, that is the kind of either objective or success of the work would be in starting a kind of specific conversation?
I wouldn't use the word objective. There is nothing objective in our films. I think it's this plurality of subjectivities that are interesting us, because I think there is no one way. There is just, we tried to gather in 20 years of work all these voices, all these testimonies, and all this very singular way of expressing their relation to space, which brings out such a rich and incredible material of telling us how much we project on the space we live in, being your house, being your workspace, being the city in which you live. And I think, as Ila was saying before, I think if we collectively would be more aware of how important this relation to spatiality is from an early age, we would be more in a qualitative approach, and we would be more into taking care of where we live, where we work.
But how does it then translate in your technique? Because actually what you're saying is I actually can now start to see it. Like the way you describe what you do, basically allow an openness for us to kind of find ourselves in the spaces and maybe begin to empathize with certain kind of experiences, which I think is actually in really what somehow you do achieve, because I always find myself being able, because you give us time to inhabit this space. You kind of stay with one observation, but we stay there for a bit. And so I wonder whether then that's actually a kind of a technical thing, or whether there are a series of technical devices that allow us to do what you want the space to.
Initially, I think we are not thinking our films under the technical aspect would just follow a more ethical approach, I think, in the sense that the way we make films is voluntarily unscripted, in the sense that we know, for instance, we will work on a neighborhood, or we will work on a specific place or environment. And the idea is to arrive there with less prejudices and possibly the idea is to live in this place for a certain, for a while, for a certain number of days, which allow you to really deep dive into the life of a community or a neighborhood, and just to get a sufficient openness to receive all these stimuli from what you get, and in order to make your understanding more complex of what you had before, there are so many different ways to make a film. Either you start with a clear idea of where you would end and where you want to go, and so this leads to a more, let's say, a very clear line of thought, and probably what the filmmaking, the time you would spend in the making of this film you would just look for confirmation of the starting point you had initially. Whereas in our approach, the making of the film is a moment where we will just expand and explore the entirety of a territory, which will bring us what we should think about it, you know? So it's a complete reversal.
The relation with the space implies an occupation of space. Your body occupies the space, but occupy the space not only with your body, also what is happening around your body. And this occupation of the space is that you exist. You exist because you are in that moment, in that time, but also in that space. You are your body. You are inside your body, or you can think about it, but you are your body and you occupy a space. When we observe, or even we go to talk with someone making our films, shooting the film, we go to talk with someone, or even we interact with them, or we meet someone, his body is only there and he occupies only that moment, that space. It's not elsewhere. So he's him. But it's him because it's not only because his body, but his body related to that space. And now you are occupying this space, and you are relating to this space. You're not the same person if you will be in another space. You have a relationship with them. When our two bodies have our relation to space, how does it say the bubble of by T-hole, let's say it's a kind of a relation between the intimate space that we have. When we arrive to talk with you, we are creating a relationship between the two. This you can visualize like a bubble, but it's a kind of, so they are in an interaction between these, and something is happening, and something is happening also with interaction with all the other people. If we understand this, we can arrive and talk about your glass, talk about what you like in the world. We are not obliged to talk about space, but we understand a lot about the space around you. When we have a collection of people like you, another one, they are related by a big space, that it could be a house, a building, a park, for example, or a city. We looking at this kind of collection of body related to the space and talking about whatever they want, and they talk about whatever they want because they are in that place and not in another one. If you are enough sensible to put all these fragments together, you will have an idea of the whole space and how this space is giving behaviors for all the people. For example, in a park is very easy to understand. You go in a park in a city. We are working now on a new film in a park in Copenhagen, and the life in Copenhagen is something. But when you go inside this park, everything is changed. And so when you enter the park has a big bubble. All the world is made by bubble. It's a big bubble. You enter in this bubble and you understand that you are elsewhere. It's another place, another space. The time also is different. But when you start talking with the people, meeting with them and talking about anything else and observing there, you understand they have something in common. And this something in common is what creates the properties of this place. Could be negative, positive, we don't know, but they are related to that place. Just the fact to understand that in a place there's something that relates all the people unconsciously, you understand that the relation with the space is so important. You go in a park and you feel totally different from the street because you feel that maybe the lady or the family just aside, you say, oh, that's beautiful. You start talking with them. You start talking, so the relation is different. The relation is totally different when you go outside of the bubble. No, when you understand this, you understand that why the city is not built for that, for this kind of relation. Why the city outside a park, a good park, because there's also a very bad park, but why in a good park this good relationship happens and not outside? Why we are not able to create the whole city like this? The whole city is a city that allows good relationship between people, and not why we are not allowed? Because the city has been also from the industrialized era moment. The city has been used to other interests. It's not, the interest is not to make a good living. We are not interested in good living in the city. We are interested in a machine that works good for commercial, for industrialization, for create level or different level of people that they don't have to live together. They have to be separate because I'm making more money than you, so I don't want to be with you. So all these things create a city that is not for everyone. Is not a city of relationship. Is the contrary, you know. So all these things is important to understand this, because you can have a reading of your city and say, wow, man, why am I doing this?
So that's where when you say we're not really making films or work about architecture.
Because architecture, when we talk architecture, everybody is thinking there's a misunderstanding, a big misunderstanding. Architecture people think that you are making a film about the walls, no, and the lights and the design, about the design. We are absolutely not interested in the design. We are interested in architects, because some of them, they have this idea of space. The architects spend. Yeah, an architect is like we always say, if you have a pain in your body, you go to a doctor, and he's the expert to find the solution for your pain. If you have a pain for space, you go to an architect, and he's the expert of space. But not all of them, because many architects, they just think about giving an answer to the client and creating these horrible cities where we live. But some of them, they spend all their lives thinking about how create a space that can allow to have a better living, no? And this is what we are interested in architecture.
In a word, we are interested to observe the social consequences of the shaping of space. That's the shift. We are not interested in the space making, but in the consequences.
And presumably when you say this now, when you say what you're interested in, that is a result of a journey. I mean, your list of films is incredible, like how prolific you've been. And then where you started is the house where you grew up or spent a lot of time in. You grew up there. What is it part or spell? Yeah, a teenager.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This was a kind of manifesto for us.
Yes.
Why? Because this is a very famous architecture made by a very famous architect, and everybody know today much more, but everybody knows this place for his architectural qualities. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
But we wanted to make a film, and we had the opportunity to make it there. We wanted to make a film that follows someone that doesn't have this kind of respect for the quality of architecture, but they just have to live in a space. And what is this living in a space like this, and also maintain this space? So is that someone that is just relating his body to a very different space, domestic space that you have elsewhere, okay? So we said, well, that's a very good opportunity to stay with someone that normally is invisible in architecture. So who is the invisible in architecture? It's all the people that for a kind of architecture, I would say elite architecture, is the architecture that we study the School of Architecture. When you go to a School of Architecture, you study a kind of elite architecture. That is the first level, no? So, A level of the architecture. And this architecture is not made for everyone, no? It's made just for a kind of elite of people. But there's many people that will live the consequence of this architecture, because this architecture is a kind of model that creates a pyramid of all many others architecture, and all is like the modernism, no? Is Le Corbusier. Le Corbusier created a kind of idea of architecture, and I started from then. All the world changed. We are living in a world completely different, no? Started from that moment. So it's very important as a model. But when you go touching this model and you say, wait, let me see how it works. And how, let me see how your body relate to that space. What you do is not a critic on saying it doesn't work, because maybe it works, but it's a power that you give to people that don't have normally the voice to do this. So it's a kind of provocation. I would say a manifesto. I say my manifesto because it's a provocation, because for the first time we gave the possibility to express himself to a lady that is cleaning a place like this. Where are the people cleaning? There are many people cleaning, maintaining this very good model of architecture, but where they are, they don't have a place in architecture. So we wanted to put it in the center of the narration of the image, a body of someone that is working from that place, and also the freedom of the speech to say whatever she wants. And this is a provocation, and it has been a very strong provocation, because we have been attacked by many people from the architects, very famous and known architects, that they say, what are you doing? Why you allowed a cleaning lady to talk about architecture? She doesn't know anything about architecture. Yes, she doesn't know anything about architecture, but she knows very much better about space. What is it? Much better than you. Because she can say how is moving in that space, how is clean in that space, how is it relating to that space, no, with your body. So she has many other qualities that they are completely invisible in architecture. And it's something that we did also for many other films after that one, and we wanted to also to work with people that they are, for example, in a building side, the building side, people living in a building side, they don't have access to their own space. They are there just used by the machine to create the building, and the day where they are finished, the day of the opening of the building, they disappear. Nobody knows anything about them. They have done everything in that place, but they are not allowed to be there. Or they say just the day before, say thank you very much, bye-bye. And now I call all the curators, all the critics of architecture, all the people, they can take their little champagne and say, oh, that's as good. The architect made a good work. Yeah, the architect maybe put some ideas, but many people, they have to work for that, and you don't know anything about them. And also, what is much more important, we don't know anything about their relation to the space, because they don't have a relation to space. You are just you are functional to the machine. So you have to put this there and this there and this there. But you cannot have your place. You don't have your place in that. Yes, you have your place, but outside the building. You have your place in some little construction for workers that are horrible, okay? But they don't have place. So, for example, for one film, we decided to say, okay, we are going to work in a building site. It's very interesting, but let's give back the space, the personal space to every worker. And so we made some portrait of workers. Everybody behind was working, so going in all directions, but they stayed just watching the camera for 1 minute, 2 minutes. It's not a lot, but it's also a provocation. It's 2 minutes having their space. So you don't enter. This is my space now. So I take back my space, and I exist with my dignity in this place. The spatial dignity. This is very important. What is the spatial dignity? Is that now this is your space. This is my space. I'm in a place, and this is mine. Okay, and in the building site, there's no special dignity. You make your work and go away. So all this kind of experiment that we do is every time to recreate little spatial dignity.
Again, that's something that you realize you were doing.
Yeah,
over time. I'm just curious again to maybe slightly then again go back to this idea of manifesto and the house.
The Koolhaas HouseLife was a film with very precise intentions, which was, as I said, a sort of provocation, because also to open up a broader dialogue about how architecture is being represented, just to push boundaries and to say, okay, where is the human there is no place for human representation in architecture. And so we said, okay, let's do a film that breaks all the rules, and we make the film out of everything which remains hidden, or which remains intentionally out of the frame, you know. And so that's why the film was made expressively based on a sort of list of intentions of showing the unshowable. So labor, imperfections, questions of aging, of a recent building, all these elements which are considered to be problematic, but if you include them in a more sensible and sensorial approach, you understand that, I mean, all these questions are just normal, daily basis question of maintenance, of care, of accepting the process of time. And so we just wanted to humanize the representation of architecture by bringing all these topics that were almost like taboos in the world of architecture. And then, so based on this first film, we understood the impact on the public debate was so strong that we thought, okay, let's go on with this. So let's move on different other scales of buildings to see if this experiment is also valuable and interesting to move it in other kinds of buildings and typologies. So we enlarged the scale up to the city scale. And and I think we understood that it was so rich in terms of anthropological questions that we thought it was worth working for 20 years.
And I think what's interesting, this point that you make, Ila, about spatial dignity, because I think that's where maybe we start to think about your work beyond the film. Because when you talk about the worker, or when you talk about kind of representing the kind of unseen, that almost has like a performative aspect, performative in a practice sense. It's kind of like a performance art, or it's like something that a performance artist might do, where they kind of allow that space, or like you create space.
Let's say that we have used many times this formula of performative cinema to describe a bit the process of the way we make films, because we intentionally also don't agree with the form of scripted cinema, which wouldn't allow any of this surprise or discovery of exploratory dynamic that the film should be, or in our understanding. So the idea is that we define a starting day, a starting moment, and then the film grows out of what we found. So it's really about developing findings and how you improvise on what is there. We even made films in a one-day shooting to stretch the time constraints to such a high degree that it needs a very strong response in terms of presence. We understand these films a bit as exercises of presence, of being here, the here and now. So the film is written on a present tense. There is no projection in a future. We don't use these tactics of and artificiality of the editing to transform the time, the timeline. Let's say we keep timeline in the present tense. So it turns out for us behind the camera to be extremely present with the people we are and with any kind of unpredictable elements that appear to discuss with, to interact with, to take in for making the film.
It's interesting that technically the question of the script that I will relate also to something, another detail that seems very not so important, but it's very important, is also the tripod. And the script and the tripod makes you decide before what to do, because you have to decide where what you want to do, what you are expecting from a situation, and also with the tripod, you are going to decide where to put your point of view, where to put your body, when you position your body, where to stay, and how you're gonna to film. These two things doesn't allow this openness that Louise was talking about, that when we are going a place, we don't know what we are gonna to find, and we don't know what is happening. We just know that we want to stay for a while in a place and observing what is happening there, and also reacting immediately. And so if you're talking with someone that he is going somewhere, you go with them. We go with them, so we have to move. We have to understand the camera moves because follows the other. It doesn't impose and direct his position. When I put a tripod, I have decided where to stay. So I decide which one is the space that you have to occupy. So I'm decided. When I make a script, I'm undecided. So I'm entering too much.
Well, you're projecting onto the
And
space.
also I'm projecting my idea. I'm projecting my idea that I can have a good idea, or a bad idea, but it's my idea. We don't want to do this. So we need to be very reacting and moving. So our camera move all the time. Obviously, is maybe not so easy to follow like a tripod, but is that I think that you
use tripod. I mean,
very rarely. We don't have a tripod. Every time we ask we borrow a tripod, but it's very rare. Very rare. We can stay stable, but we stay stable without a tripod. We don't know, because a tripod for us is really decide a point of view, and this point of view is the right one. So we don't.
There is a rigidity, and it's.
Obviously, we know very well which could be a good angle to film this kitchen, for example. No, so we could do it. It's not so complicated. But when you are with someone inside the place, he's decided where to go. And if you have your angle there, you cannot say, "Hey, can you go more?"
It's interesting because a filmmaker is called a director, and a director, the role of the director is to direct. So you have this implies a hierarchy. This implies a form of power over the person you're filming. And when you use a camera, it's already such a annoying presence to accept. This is already invading your space and your sense of self so much that we try to avoid making it too invading, using either the tripod, which makes you stay in a very narrow space. So the idea of this loose movement is also to give more freedom and a sense of being less encapsulated.
But is it in that you're art, that you also think of yourself as artists?
We think of ourselves as artists. We said this?
I don't know. I guess you didn't. I guess maybe online or somewhere, like when one looks you up.
I don't know what is it to be
artists or filmmakers.
Yes, it's a word that summarizes the fact that you are practicing with images without fitting in one case.
Exactly, but you also said that you're not just filmmakers.
Yeah.
Or that you wouldn't define your work.
I would say, like Luis said, it was very interesting, like the definition. We are not directors, we are observers. It's different. We don't direct, we observe. You can understand anything with this.
Yeah, sure. And that's what we bring from documentary filmmaking, which is this ethical dimension of knowing how to, a form of humility, and this is what also we try to bring to students when we teach in educational context is, in architecture, students learn to become directors of space. They become how to impose ideas and shapes and forms, and they try to to get that strength and that style. And so they think in terms of forms. And when we try to do it, is
dissolve that
in order to become a little bit more observers and humble and say, okay, let's look before.
Yeah, in the School of Architecture, it would be very interesting to teach the student before being the director of a space, to be the observer of a space. You start by observing. When you understand something a little bit more, you can think about directing the space. But now in the School of Architecture, you're in the first year, you start to study to be directed immediately. But what can you direct if you don't know anything about the people you are directing for?
Two things. I mean, first, I just want to respond to calling an artist, because I feel like, okay, maybe if I was now suddenly if I put myself in a role of a, let's say, art historian, which I'm not, and I don't think I would be, but let's say I'm an art historian, and then I'm trying to then define or look at your work and say, where is the art in it? And I would say that maybe art would be in your kind of drive or in this looseness that you're describing. That is ultimately the kind of artistic.
Yeah, let's say that it's interesting. Neither Ila nor I studied filmmaking in a school where, as for architecture, you would learn from first year tools and forma mentis to become a proper filmmaker. And I think this fact that we don't have this list of how you should do things, and we have backgrounds which are a bit different, and we like to bring all those horizons in to say, okay, let's take a bit of literature, let's take a bit of visual art, let's take a bit of documentary filmmaking, let's take what it brought from architecture studies and etc. And at the end, we don't think of placing ourselves in one form of things, how they should be done, but just like make forms of we find.
And I think yes, but then also I would also say that in what you say about observation, I completely agree. It's something that I think film is the medium of it in a way, because it, even though you may not use a tripod, but you direct your gaze, like you show us what you're looking at through film.
This is the result of your sensibility, and we work to develop our sensibility to observe it. But this is personal. Obviously, we cannot observe for anyone else. We observe for ourselves, and after that, we communicate our observation, and maybe this allows you to have your own observation afterwards, because you become more sensible to something also through the experience of the others, no? For poems, you read a poem, after reading that poem, that is a concentrate of the sensibility of the poet. You become a little bit more sensible to that, no? So obviously, it's thanks to all the things you see around you, but it's our observation. And we don't hide this, because we are always in the film. We talk with people. We are present. We don't have an observation that is very distant. We have an observation that was from the beginning something that we wanted to do. We are part of the space. We are entering the space. We are not outside the space, because you can make films about the cities. For example, that you have a lot of film like this, that people filming from very far and filming like in a laboratory, like animals. You film, you understand, like a safari. Where from the beginning we decided that we wanted to be inside and very, very close to the people. So technically, for example, we decided to film with a wide angle, because with the wide angle you need really to be more close than this. And when you are close to someone and film someone, they see you, so they say what you want. So you have to create a relationship. You have to understand, to let them understand what you're doing. You have to work a lot with your face. You cannot film with a camera like this, for example. You cannot hide your eyes. So we film from here because why? Because we are talking with the eyes. We have the eyes contact. So and all these kind of things, we wanted to create a kind of spatial relationship. So we are inside. And so this is absolutely not objective, but it's subjective. It's a subjective film. It's our relation, our experience in that moment. But obviously we communicate with, say, with films or other things, other tools. But it's ourselves, it's us. It's a work that we do on ourselves, working on how to react to the sensibility of the other people, and how you are able to let them to give you the confidence to open themselves. And this is not easy. It's very painful even for us, because it's not so easy walking in a park and going to talk with someone and say, what do you think? What are you doing here? So it's complicated, something complicated. But it requires a lot of work on yourself. So and doing this work more than decided just the position of a tripod, for example. We work a lot more than the tripod. We work a lot on ourselves and say, okay, let's do it, because it's very important to do this.
But in this kind of development of your own technique and your own kind of way of seeing this practice, you are responding to a history of filmmaking. I mean, you're saying this is what we don't want to do. We're not a director, we're an observer. Have you also developed a palette of influences, or do you see like glimpses of in the works of, like, let's say, other filmmakers? They say, oh, that is a really interesting tool, like that.
Of course, there was a form. If we talk about films or documentary filmmaking, which was, let's say, a very personal use of film. You know, there are millions of ways of making a film, but what we've learned from also to find this right scale. You know, we work intentionally on a very small scale. We don't like to work with a big team, because obviously this would have an influence of building a relationship with someone who is just intimidated and being stressed by the presence of the camera, a crew. Or as soon as you grow and you create artificiality, it will break that quality of intimacy. So we learn a lot in that small scale form of cinema, or even the one-man band cinema. This is what we like the most. And this comes out from the 60s. In the 60s, you had all these new, thanks to the evolution of the camera and the sync sound and all these generation of filmmakers from the 60s, and above all in France and Paris in particular, on the side of the Nouvelle Vague, you have all these filmmakers like Jean Rouch, who was a big influence, or Chris Marker, or even later on, like more than Joris Ivens, the filmmaker from Amsterdam, Van der Keuken, and this form of cinema, which is so, these are real observers but you can still feel them all the time as the ones that look at the world through their distinctive sensibility and found that right balance of being involved in the film physically, or through their voice, or through just the way they move, but by this very small scale form of observation.
And when you then look from that perspective, when you then look at this thing that I'm kind of feeling like it's starting to be articulated as a kind of film architecture, filmmaking. How do you see that? I mean, you're often programmed as part of these programs, but the way I see them is that they're kind of there's a certain limitation to the kind of their understanding of what filmmaking does in relation to architecture. And though, of course, like nice work is programmed, I often feel that there is at the level of kind of curatorial imagination, there is certain kind of limitation. So I just wonder, how do you then yourself relate to the more so the curatorial practices emerging nowadays, which are kind of pulling film and into this?
Let's say that, of course, our films are shown in the architecture and, let's say, actuality, being a biennale, being a museum, being a gallery, or being...
Or lots of festivals now.
Festivals,
yeah.
Exactly. But this has the quality of bringing an audience which is very interested to the topic. And even if the films of the program are much more straightforward in the way they deal with architecture, nevertheless, we find there an audience which is very responsive and very attentive and also aware and cultivated in that film. But we like, and we also intentionally spread or work on a distribution which is quite vast and are in other fields as well, in order to discuss with other kind of audiences. But it's true that if we would do films related to music, for instance, you go to show your films in a music film festival in which your audience will be interested in music, and you will find there like a community of interest. But this doesn't mean that your film couldn't speak to an audience which is not specifically trained as musicians. So that's why we have found, or we have, let's say, developed a way of making films which are also probably talking to a vaster audience than specifically architects, but dealing mostly with topics that relate to space or cities or buildings. Of course, more architects are, let's say, sensitive to these questions. But we like to work on various, or to enlarge.
Yeah, I guess it's that thing that, I mean, when I was telling you, when I made my first film recently, I mean, I kind of knew that I don't want to make a film about architecture, or at least about an architect. But I obviously found myself talking to that audience. I mean, without even, it was very intuitive almost, and it's nothing I can escape. And
I don't know if it's a question for us to understand what kind of audience we are talking to. It's more a question of to be free to make this film as we want it to be. And obviously, we don't have a form that is entertainment, so we cannot talk to people that are watching a film just before going to sleep and have a good time. It's not. We don't make film for that. We will love to talk to the more people as possible, but keeping our way to do films, and not thinking about what kind of language I have to use to talk to them. Because this will change our research, our idea of what we are doing. You are going just to think about what kind of language I have to use, and this is not our main problem. Our problem is that you just follow a direction that create a kind of collection of films that they are going in different directions, but inquire on the same topic. That is the topic we have talking before, and this is we do it as we want to do it. Not as we want, as it's coming out of us. So we don't think about how to do it. We just think that this is our way of doing, And if we can show it in a architectural film or film festival or museum or festival for entertainment, we are happy to do it. But obviously we know that people are much more interested in what we're doing in that field more than the other. But obviously we are open to everyone. But we are not asking ourselves this question.
Mm-hmm. It's not something that is like a source of frustration or...
No, because
Because there's some recipe that you can use to make some products.
Exactly.
And we don't want to do this because, as we said, we haven't been prepared. We didn't study to make film as a recipe. We decide to make our films how it's coming outside from ourselves, and so we want to keep this kind of freedom and make our film as we can, as we know how to do it, and as it's coming is an instinctively expression. But
just because if I kind of don't ask it, I feel like I haven't asked an important question. Is that question of editing? I think that is that is where a lot of it happens, right? That's where a lot of the film actually happens.
it's where we direct.
It's where exactly. And so that's where you're really intentional. That's where you are dictatorial, right? Because,
Absolutely.
and so, and then that's maybe where this collaboration, that there is two of you, and when there is two, that's also a very interesting space because it's a space of conversation.
It's dictatorial in a sense. I don't think it's dictatorial because we use editing in a more, I would say, as referring to the question you had before, in more artistic way, in the sense that maybe it's like a sculpture that has he found a very beautiful piece of marble of wood, and he starts to create his shaping this place. And the editing for us is not related to what we want to show, because we didn't know when we shoot the film. So we have a kind of really big material, and so we had to find a way to respect this freedom of this material. And so from the very, very first beginning of the very, very first film until now that we are editing in the same way, we create a collection of fragments all the time. So we are many, many different fragments, and many fragments, they require to be in an order, chronological order, because when you make a film, you start and you end the film. So how we collect these fragments, how we put them together, we decided that from the beginning we wanted to create this editing like making music, like creating an harmony. So we create very instinctively. Maybe some pieces can go on the other way. The first film we made, we changed the editing, I don't know, 200 times, because even today you can completely change the editing. It will work because it's one fragment after the other. There's no logic.
There is a logic, but there isn't. It's not a rational logic.
Yeah, it's not rational. The logic is instinctively we create a kind of relationship between them. So it's really a kind of it could be a journey or it could be an harmony, real harmony, like a music. You have some moment goes very up and down and calm down. So it's a kind of editing like this, but it's not an editing